Chapter 17. So it really is there, Counselor Lakoviv said, feeling a strange sense of unreality as he gently stroked the 3 metal wires. It really is, Lokjeep confirmed from the chair across his office desk, and the fools have no idea what they're sitting on. So it would seem, Lakoviv agreed. They just gave these to you? Voluntarily and unhesitatingly, Lokjeep said. They said the metal has no particular value of its own. It's the skill with which the artists turn it into jewelry that's important. Lakoviv shook his head. Idiots, Lokjeep shrugged. In general, I suppose that's mostly true of art. Give an artist 100 universe to spend on paint and a presentation board, and out pops a picture someone else will spend thousands for. It's just that in this specific case, the whole thing is reversed. If you ask me, everything about the art world is just barely controlled anarchy, Lakoviv said. But that's not our problem. When is Haplif due in? Any time now, Lokjeep said. I talked to the pilot a few minutes ago and he said he was on schedule. Her lip twisted. Oh, and he's bringing Jopanek with him. Who? Jopanek, Lokjeep repeated. That Koduyo Midiger on his wandering year. He was the one who first brought Haplif in to meet you. Right, Lakoviv said, frowning as he tried to remember the boy's face. He's still here? He's still on Selwys, if that's what you mean. Lokjeep said, eyeing him curiously. He's also been at Red Hill Hall 5 or 6 times since they all arrived last month. You hadn't noticed him? I've had more important things on my mind, Lakoviv reminded her. Though now that she mentioned it, he did remember seeing a strange Midiger chatting with some of the aides and lower officials in the building's corridors. What did he want? Here at the hall, Lokjeep shrugged. I really don't know. I think he mostly wants to make as many connections with the Sodlak family as he can. Probably just playing politics and pretending he's someone who matters. Most of the aides he's been pestering have been willing enough to humor him. Or else he has some grand notion of scoring a position as a Koduyo Sodlak liaison someday, Lakoviv said. Well, when he and Haplif arrive, he's welcome to wait somewhere else. Understood, Lokjeep said. Do you have a plan for how to proceed? First, we need more details on this mining area, Lakoviv said, looking back at the wires. That's why I want Haplif. Just because you only saw Agbui there doesn't mean there aren't other alien groups involved. We did a half-orbit on the way out, with full sensors running, Lokjeep said. There was nothing anywhere but pristine, unoccupied wilderness. I'm not doubting you, Lakoviv said. But just because there's no one there now doesn't mean someone else might not drop by on occasion. There could be aliens working off-world in the supply or distribution chains. There could be several species sharing the mines, each one having control of them and the refineries for a couple of months at a time before the next group moves in and takes over, like a sublet on a home or business. I doubt that's the case, Lokjeep said, her eyes distant in thought. I can't see anyone except the Agbui failing to recognize the significance of a Nyx mine that rich. And if anyone else knew, the word would have gotten out long ago. Probably, but not necessarily, Lakoviv said. You can build commercial freighters and transports perfectly well without Nyx. In fact, after that, protocol would require him to contact Patriel Lakuni and lay everything in front of her. She would then decide how or even whether to send the information further up the family hierarchy. And that could be a sticking point. Lakoviv and Lakuni had had their disagreements over the years, and he wasn't at all sure he could trust her to believe him on this, at least not without doing extensive investigations of her own. Even if she was willing to move more quickly, it would be far too easy for her to work herself into getting all the credit while he got nothing but a side note. For that matter, she could even paint over him and Red Hill completely, and there would be little or nothing he could do about it. After that, we'll see, he told Lokjeep. This might be important enough to take directly to the Patriarch. Patriel Lakuni won't be happy if you bypass her, Lokjeep warned. Lakuni's pride isn't the issue here, Lakoviv said stiffly. Getting hold of this planet for the Sodlak family is, depending on what Haplif says, we may not have time to go through local channels. Lokjeep started to speak, stopped and looked at her calm. They're here, she said. Where do you want them? I'll see Haplif at the judgment seat, Lakoviv said. From here on, we might as well keep everything strictly official. You can leave the Koduyo boy in the reception area. Haplif was waiting in front of the white chair when Lakuviv and Lakjeep arrived. I greet you, Counselor Lakuviv, Haplif said cheerfully as they walked toward him. May I express our appreciation for your generosity in escorting our freighter to and from our mining world. Pathfinder Chilori reported that the freighter captain was most effusive in his praise. You're more than welcome, Lakuviv said, catching the eyes of the two guards who'd brought Haplif in and nodding toward the reception room. The guards nodded acknowledgement in turn and headed toward the door. Thank you for making the time to meet with us today. It is my privilege and pleasure, Haplif said. How may I serve you? I had a few questions about your facility, Lakuviv said, watching as the guards filed through the doorway and closed it behind them. Senior Aide Lakjeep was most impressed with your operation, but we were both curious about whether or not you have any other workers there. I don't understand, Haplif said, the slit of a mouth puckering in the midst of all that wrinkled facial skin. We have many workers, miners, refiners, extrusion operators, and food preparers. What others would we need? I was actually asking whether you might have hired other species for some of those tasks, Lakuviv said, watching the alien carefully. There are aliens particularly suited to underground mining, for instance, short and stocky with lower oxygen requirements and the ability to see in low-light settings. Oh no, we couldn't employ anyone like that, Haplif protested, a whole-body shiver running through him. We could never trust anyone so thoroughly as to allow them access to the mines. Our jewelry and spices are the sole sources of our livelihood. If we were to lose our source of inexpensive metals, our very survival would be in danger. Yet you let us see the operation, Lakjeep pointed out. But you are different, Haplif said, sounding puzzled. You are the Chiss, noble and honorable and courageous. You treat us as you treat all others, as fellow travelers in this grand journey through life. Despite himself, Lakuviv winced a bit. Was Haplif really that naive? You have a great deal of trust, Haplif. It is born of experience and insight, Haplif said firmly. For 3 months we have traveled with Yopanek of the Koduyo. He has been first our companion and then our friend. Through him I have learned to understand the Chiss heart, the Chiss soul, and the Chiss nobility. I would trust you with my life, Counselor Lakuviv of the Shodlak. His face seemed to cloud over. And indeed, I may very soon have to turn that trust into action. As you are aware, pirates have attacked us once. Who can say if they will do so again? Who can say if they will then find their way to our mines? You think that's possible? Lakuviv asked, feeling his heart starting to beat a little faster. This was the very opening he needed, the opening he'd been trying to figure out how to engineer. Now Haplif had unwittingly done it for him. Nothing in this universe is impossible, Haplif said solemnly. As I'm certain Senior Aide Lakjeep has told you, the Agbui have no way to stop an aggressor determined to slaughter our people and take or destroy what we've worked so hard to build. Yes, indeed, Lakuviv agreed. As if anyone in their right mind would actually destroy a Neox mine. But of course he couldn't say that. Is there anything we can do to help you? The Sodlak family has mighty warships circling this world, Haplif said, pointing one of those long fingers toward the ceiling. Even mightier than the one you sent to escort our freighter. I know, I've seen them. If one could be sent to guard our world, but I recall the difficulty you had wresting even a simple patrol craft from the hands of your patriel. This would be a much harder task. As you yourself said, nothing in the universe is impossible, Lakuviv said. I'll put a call into the patriel's office immediately. Oh, Haplif said with a distinct lack of enthusiasm. Yes, that would be wonderful. You sound unhappy, Lakuviv said. Is there a problem? No, Haplif said in that same neutral tone. Please don't take this as a criticism, Counselor Lakuviv. The Sodlak family has been wonderfully gracious to us. It's just that I'm not certain the patriel can be fully trusted. I don't mean she can't be trusted with the safety of the Agbui, he hastened to add. I'm sure she would never betray us. I'm merely concerned that she may usurp any commendations or thanks that would come to you from the determined and selfless defense of our world. I would hate to see your work pushed to the side and your initiative buried beneath another's claims. So would I, Lakuviv said grimly. So it wasn't just him who thought Lakuni was a glory thief. Haplif had seen that in her, too. More important than any commendations, though, is the question of whether we have time to go through the proper protocol. Under the circumstances, perhaps I should contact the Patriarch directly with this matter. The loose skin of Haplif's face piled itself into a bunch. "You can do that?" he asked with obvious amazement. "You can speak directly to the exalted head of the Sodlak family?" "Of course," Lakuviv said. It wasn't nearly that easy, of course. He would have to go through at least a couple of layers of homestead officials before he even reached the Patriarch's office, let alone the Patriarch himself. But this was important enough and urgent enough that he was confident he would be passed through those obstacles with minimal delay. "I'll start the procedure at once." "Thank you for coming," Lakjeep put in. "I'll have your driver take you back to Lakfro's ranch. We'll contact you again as soon as Counselor Lakuviv has news." "You are gracious, Senior Aide Lakjeep," Haplif said. "However, would it not be better for me to remain here and available for any questions your Patriarch might have? There may be details that only I can supply." "Possibly," Lakjeep said, looking questioningly at Lakuviv. She knew as well as he did the kind of bureaucratic maze he was casually promising to walk his way through, and how long things of that sort normally took. But it might not be right away. "I am content to wait," Haplif said. "The sooner we have Zodlak defenders over our world, the sooner all Agbui will be able to rest." "If you're willing, it's all right with me," Lakuviv said. "Senior Aide Lakjeep will instruct the guards outside to find you a place where you can rest and arrange for some refreshment." "Once again, I am in your debt," Haplif. Now, if only his name could move up the Sodlak family hierarchy, that would be the real miracle. Lakuviv's call to the Patriarch went about as well as he should have expected. He connected to the family homestead on Shilla without difficulty. Identifying himself as a counselor on Selwis got him through the first 2 layers of screening, while his insistence that the matter was vital to Sodlak interests got him through a 3rd layer. Barely an hour after beginning the call, he was finally to the Patriarch's office, talking with the Patriarch's 3rd aide, and there the whole thing ground to a halt. He said that there was nothing interesting or amusing, let alone vital, that a counselor could possibly bring to the Patriarch's attention. He fumed to Lakjeep, glaring at the comm display on his office desk. The blank comm display. The cursed aide had said a brief goodbye, told him to go through proper channels next time and cut him off. "Maybe Patriel Lakuni would have better luck," Lakjeep suggested. "Lakuni doesn't know anything about this," Lakuviv reminded her. "Maybe it's time she did." Lakuviv clenched his teeth. Unfortunately, she was right. Without the Patriel's approval, he wouldn't even be able to get another patrol ship to send to the Agbui, let alone the dormant frigate or one of the cruisers. Not that any of the warships would do much good anyway. Without full crews, they were really only useful for the cruiser's current job as defensive weapons platforms. Still, even a couple of patrol ships would be better than nothing. At least that would give the Xodlak some claim to the mines and their output when they eventually brought this to the Syndicure. "Fine," he said with a sigh as he keyed the comm again. The Patriel didn't have nearly as many layers of screening as the Patriarch, and there were far fewer officials below her clamoring for her attention. 10 minutes after Lakuviv initiated the call, Lakuni was on. "I should inform you right up front," Lakuni said after the standard greetings, "that I've already heard from the Patriarch's office. I am not pleased you went over my authority that way." "I'm sorry if you feel slighted," Lakuviv said, working hard to hold on to what was left of his temper. No concern for anything but rigid structure and her own petty authority. "But a situation has unexpectedly arisen, one that could either bring great profit and renown to the Sodlak or mean disaster for the entire Ascendancy." "I also don't appreciate theatrics, Counselor," Lakuni growled. "Fine. You have 2 minutes to tell me what's going on." "It concerns the Agbui cultural nomads who arrived in Red Hill Province a month ago," Lakuviv said. "I can't say more than that on the comm. This is a secure connection." "We can't rely on that," Lakuviv countered. "I need you to come to Red Hill Hall, where I can give you the full story." "Are you insane?" Lakuni demanded. "If you want a face-to-face, you can come here. There are reports and resources here that I can't bring with me, Lakuviv said. Resources that rival family representatives in Brickwalk might notice and wonder about. So let them gawk, Lakuni said impatiently. What could they possibly see that would be a problem? Lakuviv clenched his hands into fists. Could she not even take a hint when it was dropped straight in front of her? I told you this is something that could bring renown to the Sodlak, he said. It would bring equal renown to any other family that got to it first. And to whoever the liaison was who brought it to that family's attention. There was a brief silence. You thought this was worth taking directly to the Patriarch, Lakuni said, taking past me to the Patriarch. Only because the timing here is critical, Lakuviv said. If we don't get moving quickly, we may not be able to move at all. Another silence, a longer one this time. Lakuni knew even better than he did how family rivalries swirled through the upper echelons of Ascendancy life. Fine, she said reluctantly. Whatever it is, I still think you're way off vector here. But fine, I was going to head to Fisher Lake tomorrow for a few days anyway. I'll leave now instead and swing by Red Hill on my way. Thank you, Patriel, Lakuviv said, breathing a silent sigh of relief. If he could convince Lakuni, maybe together they could get the Patriarch moving in time to get some ships out there and take possession of the mines. You won't be disappointed. I had better not be, Lakuni warned. I'll be there in 3 hours. Be ready to amaze me. She broke the connection. Lakuviv gazed at the display another moment, then looked across the desk at Lakjeep. She's coming, he said. So I gathered, Lakjeep said. Whether she'll agree to take it to the Patriarch is a different question. She will, Lakuviv said. She's quite predictable when she thinks there's something in it for her. Putting her in a special class with almost everyone else, Lakjeep said. Are you going to keep Haplif and Yopanek in the hall until she arrives? We have to keep Haplif anyway, Lakuviv said, standing up. Once again, he'd almost forgotten the Koduyo boy was even here. If Yopanek wants to go back to the Agbui ship, we'll have someone take him. They found Haplif and Yopanek in one of the conference rooms, talking earnestly over the remains of the meal that had been sent in to them. Ah, Counselor Lakuviv, Haplif said brightly as he spotted the newcomers. And Senior Aide Lakjeep, do you bring good news? I hope so, Lakuviv said. I've persuaded Patriel Lakuni to come here and discuss the matter with me. She may have some questions for you as well, so I trust you're still willing to stay? Absolutely, Haplif said. If she approves of your request for Sodlak family assistance, what will be the next step? We go to the Patriarch and ask him to authorize military action. Lakuviv said, the Sodlak family still has a small fleet from our time as one of the ruling families, though the major warships are understaffed and have been repurposed as planetary defense platforms. Like the warships circling Selwys? Haplif asked. The light cruisers, yes, Lakuviv said, nodding. There's also a frigate in the system that's essentially dormant. At any rate, if the Patriarch agrees, the next step will be to gather Sodlak reservists from our various worlds to fully crew whatever ships he decides to send. Yopanek cleared his throat. That sounds like it will take time, he said. Everything takes time, Yopanek, Lakuviv said, pinning the Midiger with a glare. What was the boy interrupting for? None of this had anything to do with him or the Koduyo family. Would you prefer waiting for the next class of graduates from Taharim Academy? Well, Yopanek looked at Haplif. Go ahead, the Agbui urged. It was your thought and insight. All right. Yopanek turned back to Lakuviv. Unless the Sodlak worked differently from everyone else in the Ascendancy, you could declare a family emergency and bring some officers and warriors directly from the expansionary defense fleet. Lakuviv stared at him. What are you talking about? I'm talking about bringing in people from the fleet, Yopanek repeated. I mean real officers and warriors, not reservists like you were talking about. I mean reservists might not have been aboard a ship for years. You can call up as many as, let's see, I think it's... Never mind the numbers, Lakuviv interrupted. What do you mean by a family emergency? It's something any of the 40 can do if they were ever one of the ruling families and have an undercrewed family fleet. Yopanek said. I studied this a while back. Thought the whole concept was fascinating. It was, about 30 years ago that some breakaway alien sect was threatening to move in on Koduyo holdings on Massos. The family declared an emergency, but the Defense Force was busy with something somewhere else and couldn't spare us any ships, so we got some of our family members off their ships. Yes, I get the gist, Lakuviv interrupted, looking at Lakjeep. Senior aide? Found it, Lakjeep said, peering at her questies. It was 32 years ago. The Koduyo had a very old light cruiser at Massos. It was 100 years since we'd been one of the ruling families, so of course it was old, Yopanek interjected, which 300 officers and warriors from the Defense Force were quickly brought in to crew, Lakjeep said, ignoring the interruption. By the time the aliens arrived in force, the cruiser was reactivated and able to quickly drive them off. But that was a security issue, Lakuviv pointed out. That's not what we've got here. I don't think the declaration has any specific requirements, Lakjeep said, tapping back and forth between pages. No, it doesn't, Yopanek confirmed. The Patriel just has to declare an emergency, Lakjeep continued, ignoring the boy's interruption, and send a message out to all Defense Force and Expansionary Defense Fleet personnel. And their captains just let them go? Lakuviv asked, feeling a sudden stirring. So the Patriarch's office wasn't even involved in the procedure? Lakjeep shrugged. Unless a ship is engaged in combat or what's called an imminent threat situation, the commander has to authorize 15 days leave to anyone who's called to answer such a summons. Extraordinary, Haplif said, shaking his head. I've never heard of such an arrangement anywhere else the Agbui have visited. If a particular ship is close enough to the declaring planet and there are enough family personnel to justify it, the commander may agree to swing by and drop them off, Lakjeep said. But most of them will be dropped at the nearest planet and required to make their own way. Does the family then reimburse them for that expense? Haplif asked, his forehead skin bunching again. That, or they use travel passes, Lakuviv said, his mind spinning with possibilities. Selwys had the warships, and with a family emergency declaration they would have the officers and warriors to crew them. All he needed was the Patriel's approval, and the Neox mine was as good as theirs. Those are permits that allow them to travel free on any civilian transport within the Ascendancy. Most of the 40 great families give them to their military personnel. The Koduyo do, Yopanek put in. So do the Sodlak, Lakuviv said. I see. Haplif tilted his head a bit. Do I take it from the expression on your face that you have a plan? You take it correctly, Lakuviv said. Thank you, Yopanek, for bringing that bit of history to my attention. I don't think I'd ever heard of that arrangement before. You're welcome, Yopanek said. Of course, the last time it was used was 3 decades ago, so it's not surprising you hadn't heard of it. Which could have been a subtle insult, Lakuviv knew, a high-ranking official of another family being unaware of important political history and law. But right now, he couldn't be bothered even to resent the boy's audacity. I think now that you and Yopanek won't be needed tonight after all, he went on. If you'll collect anything you brought, I'll have the driver meet you at the Skycar and fly you back to Lakfro's ranch. Now? Haplif asked, sounding suddenly wary. But you said Patriel Lakuni was on her way. What if you need me to talk to her? Don't worry, I'll convince her, Lakuviv assured him. It's getting late, and I'm sure you have work to do tomorrow, spices to harvest or something of that sort. Very well, Haplif said. He seemed still uneasy but willing to go along. Come, Yopanek. Thank you for your hospitality, Counselor Lakuviv. The guard outside will escort you to the Skycar, Lakuviv said as the alien and Chiss Midiger headed for the door. I'll let you know if and when I have good news. You will have it, Haplif promised. Great rewards emerge like gloriosi from the silken sheaths of great risks. Whatever risks you take on behalf of the Agbui, they will be repaid 1,000-fold. I'm sure they will, Lakuviv said. He watched in silence until the door had closed behind them, then turned to Lakjeep. I want the names and ship assignments of all Zodlak members in the Expansionary Defense Fleet, he said. Also see if you can get a listing of what officer and crew positions we'll need to fill on the frigate and cruisers. Understood, Lakjeep said, working her questies. I wouldn't worry too much about the positions, though. It's still Sodlak policy that family members who join the fleet must also become familiar with our own warships and their operation. Everyone we get should be able to step into any shipboard position with a few hours orientation. Let's hope so, Lakuviv said. Regardless, that'll be for them to work out. Do we have a comm specialist on staff? We have two. Get me one of them. Make it the one who's best at keeping secrets. Yes, sir, Lakjeep said, eyeing him. What happens if you can't persuade the Patriel? I'll persuade her, Lakuviv promised grimly.